I'm here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the political video with Jason Bermas, and I wanted to talk to you about, because you and I have both covered Epstein, and Ghislaine got arrested a little over a month ago, so we haven't seen her. All that we've seen is a sketch of her in a Zoom trial. Mm-hmm. We've seen no photographs. We've seen no is set for next year. Mm-hmm. They've released some documents, but then this Judge Preska, who's got a history of kind of protecting people with regard to documents, protecting Epstein people, basically, won't release all of the documents. And so this is really like, and of course, the documents that were released, they always sort of frame the thing with Epstein. You can talk. We'll let you talk about this. We'll let you talk about that. Even the Netflix special is like, we'll let the victims speak, which is great. And the victims would bring up some pretty, severe stuff. And then they would just move on to it. They wouldn't go into the documentary. Didn't be like, well, wait a minute, the Clintons, there's all this evidence, and Al Gore and all these. Nope. They just sort of mention it and move on. And it's the same thing when these documents are released. It's like, Bill's on the plane 26 times. Hillary's on twice. The both of them are at his compound in New Mexico numerous times. Ghislaine Maxwell was at their daughter's wedding. They don't talk about any of that. They don't talk about William Barr and Acosta giving Epstein helping him get a sweetheart in 2009. They don't talk about Ivanka Trump and Ghislaine going out recruiting. They don't talk about how everybody in the ruling class, the Trumps, the Bushes, everybody has got some kind of connection to this. And there's never a mention of Les Wexner, despite the fact that Maria Farmer has said he's the head of the North American snake. Like, he's never mentioned. I mean, never. So where do you see this? I mean, is she going to just get paper t-shirted in jail? Is she, what's going to happen? Somebody proposed a theory that there might be something to this, because she has stuff on both, Biden and the Clintons and the Democratic Party and Trump and all these hardcore Republicans, that she's like bartering. So one of you better protect me. And if you don't, whoever protects me, I won't reveal that information. Because apparently she's got these hard drives of evidence, and, she's obviously evil and mean and will play whatever angle she's got to play. Because she's a pedophile and a sex trafficker. So how do you see all this playing out as somebody that's followed this pretty closely?
All right, so let's start all the way at her arrest, right? Mm-hmm. So it just so happened that when that was happening, I'm in New York State. I'm leaving. It's never been worse here. So I decided I was going to travel the country. I grabbed a car and I started in New Hampshire because I wanted to go visit my buddies, Eric and Mike Jackman. And it just so happened the day after I had planned my trip, they picked up Ghislaine Maxwell, where in New Hampshire, right outside of Keene. So we actually drove out there, and we drove out there the day after she got picked up. And basically she was in the woods, right? But think about it. She was in a place in New Hampshire that was close to what? Boston, where she was identified as being with the same tech guy that set up a phony LLC and bought this house for her. Okay. And this was immediately after Epstein was arrested, right? The Daily Mail ran with that story. I reported on it. And within 3 days, that had been ignored. And they started talking about the In-N-Out Burger photos that were over on the West Coast. All right. You got to think about that. So right away, the media had a beat on her. Okay. If in fact this is where she was. And I do believe this is where she was. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. So as we start going down, I lose cell phone service. So we recorded it mostly. And then we got it there. Your neighbors would have never known you were here. There were no sidewalks for at least 5 to 10 miles down the road. We're talking about wooded areas in the woods. So we get there, and there's already a few cars parked. The London Guardian was there, and they walked up the driveway. And remember, she had a big piece of stone that had tucked away carved in it. So they walk up about half a mile. They get to a fence. It's gated. Some guy with tattoos who'd worked there, so apparently said that he had been employed by her brother along with somebody else. They were switching shifts, and this was the person that was leaving and coming back. So she never, ever left that property once she got there. Closed that deal in, I believe it was December, and started it in September. And remember, Epstein got picked up in July. So all this is moving pretty quick, paid in cash. Now another guy comes up and he's a city council member, and he does the same thing. He talks to me for a bit. He says that the guest house was the actual house there 2 years ago. So the entire huge house on top of the estate had just been built within probably the last 18 to 24 months. You have to ask yourself if, they catered to this guy or her to build this place for. So she might have felt pretty comfortable, right? Then I realized that there's actually cell service right in front of her driveway. So almost nowhere else, and right there in front of her driveway, she does have cell service. So I do a quick deal, and then another neighbor comes out, and he's got drone footage of the thing. And I'll tell you what, man, from seeing the drone footage, from being there with the fence and talking to the neighbors across the street, I have really almost no doubt she was picked up. A lot of people were doubting. They hadn't seen the mugshot. They usually don't do that in federal cases. However, I also read a lot of the reasons why they chose. A lot of people were saying, well, they only charged her for the 94 to 97 crimes, right? What about all those crimes that happened in Florida? Well, they're really smart. They didn't want that non-prosecution agreement to come into play no matter what. So they framed these crimes around that non-prosecution agreement in case a judge would go after. So basically, it was pretty brilliant. I read it on air. So basically, the SDNY and the FBI made this document basically opposing anything the judge could possibly say that agreement that Epstein had made with Palm Beach in 2008 and the feds and Acosta, like you said, had any relevancy in this case. So she was taken in. We know about the hearing from Zoom. Now, some of the journalists that were there, as well as some of the victims who made impact statements, did say they saw her on that call. Whether or not she's in the Brooklyn facility or that call was from somewhere else or what we can believe, I don't know, because like you said, Bill Barr is about as sketchy as it comes. You get to Bill Barr. Bill Barr is the youngest attorney general ever under who? George H.W. Bush. By the way, Biden sat up there and told everybody what a great guy he was at his confirmation hearing, where they didn't even hold a vote. It was the yays and nays. So that should show you how deep state Bill Barr is. He was in the CIA as he got his law degree, which he would later use at Kirkland and Ellis, one of the firms that defended Epstein. Okay. I mean, he actually had to talk about recusing himself, possibly even before Epstein was arrested on several occasions when he was asked about the case. The other thing about Bill Barr is right before he was becoming that first attorney general under Bush 1, that Bush name, it just keeps coming up, that dynasty, those social climbers, was that he put in the paperwork with Robert Mueller, his best friend at the time, to bring Manuel Noriega over illegally. The only difference between Manuel Noriega and Julian Assange on how they'll be treated is that Manuel Noriega actually ran black operations and drug running and arms dealing for them and was their asset. And Julian Assange actually exposed that type of behavior again and again, but they'll be treated the same regardless. It's frightening because it's true. And I did some videos on Bill Barr after that, where, he's asked straight up whether Ghislaine Maxwell is going to remain alive, and he's laughing about it. And it's a big joke to him and the guy who's interviewing, because it is a big joke, right, Graham? I mean, this guy was supposedly reported at being at MCC before his first suicide attempt that didn't work. And then his second suicide attempt works. We don't have any cameras. We don't have any footage. Guards were asleep. And he's telling us, hey, he killed himself. We should trust Bill Barr. And people, like you said, that want to be in that Q crowd, and they're taking down the deep state, and they got their Q decoder ring, and they're on a message board, they're ready for it. And what plays into that is the other side is so damn dishonest, right? With Russiagate, with Cranegate, with saying, I don't know how mail-in voting could be a fraud if it wasn't an absentee ballot. What are you talking about? And then Bill Barr just sits up there and talks about common sense things, and he looks like a superhero. I assure you he is not. So it's a great question because, like you said, the documents that keep getting leaked, they're overlapped, right? Other than right before Epstein killing himself, which did give us some new names. It gave us George Mitchell. It gave us Bill Richardson, right? It gave us Glenn Dubin. Now, these new documents, although it doesn't give a new name, I did see the possibility of a king who spoke Spanish in that same circle with Dershowitz and others that have been named. Other than that, it's only kind of window dressing of what all of us already knew. And they suppressed in the media, right? That Clinton was involved, that he did know Trump, that Hillary is involved, that Prince Andrew's involved. What they don't want to talk about are the intelligence networks. Like you said, banned on Netflix was any intelligence talk. However, Investigation Discovery did a 3-part series on Epstein. Didn't hear about that one. Led with Maria Farmer. Did talk about Wexner, pretty much covered everything other than the Acosta stuff. And I'm hoping they do a season 2, because they weren't afraid to talk about the Mossad. They weren't afraid to confront Mike Malloy, who wrote Filthy Rich with James Patterson about that possibility, to talk about Central Intelligence and stuff like that. So the Investigation Discovery series, Who Killed Jeffrey Epstein, 3 parts. You can watch that for free. And it didn't get the push the other ones did. I wonder why, Graham.
That's weird. It's weird that one got buried. And then the one that just sort of, I always like see what the propaganda is trying to do when something gets pushed on all of us. I always talk to some of my friends who are smart, decent people, but maybe they're not paying as much attention as we are. Maybe they're neoliberals, whatever. And I always ask them, what did you think? And I'll hear a couple of them say, yeah, but I mean, I watched that documentary and the Clintons, they just didn't know how bad he was. All right, there it is. I go, oh, that was the point of that Netflix documentary. There it is, to put that message out there. Just like with Harvey Weinstein, boy, we didn't know, even though he's donated $2.3 million to all these Democrats. We had no idea. Like, we're just supposed to continue to believe that. And I'm like, that's how effective the propaganda is. Like when I heard a family member 4 years ago goes, yeah, but single payer healthcare is pie in the sky. I was like, those are the exact talking points. They're the exact talking points that the DNC puts out. I mean, I put this thing up on my screen numerous times, the propaganda multiplier. It comes down from the Pentagon, the CIA, and, the White House, and then they filter it down to Reuters and these other news organizations, the 3 main outlets, and then they get it to all the other news outlets. So then the average person thinks, well, look, they were talking about it on Fox and MSNBC, and Stephen Colbert made a joke about it, so it's got to be real. And it's like, no, they all were saying the exact same point. It all came from the same thing. And you're seeing this. The Epstein case is so, you see how sophisticated it is, because, and every time with the pedophile thing, they always try to seal it off. Kind of like with the cops, like just a bad apple. Well, we don't have systemic racism. We just had we had a bad apple, lone gunman, it's always, they always try to seal it off in that same capacity. And like one of the things that came out in the Maria Farmer interview, that the connection that I made that I haven't heard anybody else make, was she talked about when she came forward in the 90s, she said, actually, the FBI was worse to me than Wexner and Ghislaine. And I said, who's the head of the FBI? Oh, it was Free. It was appointed by Bill Clinton. And I'm like, Judge Free, who did the Free report when they were saying that Penn State did. And I remember that back in 2011. And then the Free report came out in 2012. And I read most of the Free report. And at the time, I wasn't paying as much attention. I thought, well, he did a pretty good job. He showed how Joe Paterno, they showed all these emails and they knew. And now knowing what I know, I went, oh, that's what that Free report was. Joe Paterno should have done more. Joe Paterno, who's dead, and it sealed it off. And I'll never forget when I was like, wait, that's the same Judge Free. I remember what my friend Eric Oldenburg said, who was a former child crimes investigator. I had him on the show last year. This is what he said in 2011 when Penn State happened. I was in Phoenix doing shows when he was still on Phoenix PD, and we were talking about this, and he was currently at the time investigating that kind of stuff. He said, Graham, you have no idea. It's horrific. It's horrific. He told me about the websites where they would be auctioning kids off, but it would look like something else. That's why I wasn't shocked. Well, no, I was shocked, but not, it made sense to me, the Wayfair thing, like these cabinets for 15 grand called the Annette Wayfair cabinet or whatever, like at all. Everything my friend said to me in 2011, it all fell into place, because he said, Graham, Sandusky was probably getting kids for alumni. And I went, what? He goes, the ring and the more powerful, he said, pedophiles come from every walk of life, every ethnicity, every gender, every sexual orientation. He goes, but the powerful people, they get away with it way more. And so it made all of this sense. So Sandusky goes to jail. We did it. We got the bad guy. Paterno passed away. Oh, too bad. He probably should have done more. Yay, Penn State football to the Rose Bowl. Like, let's just seal it off and forget about it. So that's the thing. They always frame it like that Prince Andrew BBC interview was a failed attempt, but it was so clearly Buckingham Palace going, hey, dude, you better get on camera and distance the palace from your friend Ghislaine and Epstein. And that's why he gave that nonsense. Oh, I lost my sweat glands in the war. I'd never wear a jacket outside in London. And, oh, I guess I'm too honorable. Or she was a +1 or whatever that nonsense that he was saying. So what are you bringing up behind you that you want to show us?
So what I'm trying to show you right here is Jerry Sandusky did pimp out young boys to rich donors. I remember because I was one of the few people talking about it back in 2011. In fact, there were people that signed court affidavits that they were on planes with him and billionaire donors where they were having their ways with young boys. Now, that was the real scandal. Let's bring it all full circle. You're talking about Louis Freeh. You're talking about Sandusky and the fact that he was pimping these boys out. And folks, that's exactly what he was doing. In fact, Paterno tried to do something. And then, what was his name? Mark. He was the redheaded coach. He did the right thing. He's the one that walked in on Sandusky and that young boy. He actually did go to the authorities. They're the ones that covered it up. And he and Paterno are the ones that took the flack in that Louis Freeh hit job. People should also understand, we've been talking about Bush Sr. a lot. Well, part of his 1,000 Points of Light Foundation was what? Sandusky's Second Mile Foundation, where he had ready access to young boys who were from what? Families that, couldn't take care of them. They were from home.
Let me interject that real quick, because that's another valid point that my detective friend, now retired, but my Eric Oldenburg said on the show when the Sandusky thing happened and Sandusky's foundation, he goes, Graham, you show me 100 kids that were abused, 95, 99 of them will be from disadvantaged homes, because first of all, they know there's no parents around. So they start giving the kids gifts or whatever. So a kid with two parents that are paying attention comes home and says, oh, my football coach gave me a bike. They're going to be like, who's this guy? Wait a minute. But no parents around, you can do that. And then the kids that come from disadvantaged homes, or they were abandoned or abused, like physically, any affection, any attention in a child's brain, an undeveloped child's brain goes, oh, somebody likes me in some way, even if they're doing these weird, creepy things to me, so they know that. Predators like Sandusky know that. And that's another thing. It's horrific because there's organizations out there doing good work, helping disadvantaged kids. And then there's these predator class people that set these organizations up to basically scoop up kids. And that's what Sandusky was doing. But I wanted to point that out there, that's confirmed, that's a standard tactic by pedophiles, that a child crimes investigator confirmed for me years ago. Of like, he goes, no. And I said that when we were having this conversation in 2011, I was like, that's awful. He goes, yeah. He goes, every little league coach isn't bad or guilty or whatever, but pedophiles work their way into those things. They set up these and when they're powerful, they set these organizations up and then they get them for the alumni. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go back to what you were saying about the 1,000 Points of Light.
Yeah, it's just these foundations. You're 100% right that they do set these up and they do work in these things. When you look at Barney Frank and the prostitution ring that was being run out of his DC home, it was also connected to Chevy Chase Middle School. That went nowhere. Think about that for a second. Look at Tom Foley, who back during the Chris Hansen days actually went on Chris Hansen and was championing all of this child abuse legislation, heading all these organizations, got caught trying to have sex with his 15-year-old pages. Mayor of Seattle, Ed Murray. Okay, Ed Murray, out of high school, was working at boys and girls clubs, had little brothers, and the multitude of abuse of children that he was accused of, off the charts. So there are these patterns here. And, to kind of, again, bring it into these circles, bringing it back to the Bush era. You were talking about the Clintons. Well, George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, they're not enemies. They're right. I mean, not only open in libraries together, people have to understand their synthesis in the 80s is what really brought this network out with its fangs. What do I mean? Where do you think the cocaine was going during Iran-Contra? It was going to Mena, Arkansas, while Bill Clinton was governor. Okay. And the FBI, I think 2-3 weeks ago, just released heavily redacted Barry Seal documents. And of course, they made that American-made movie about him, total whitewash of what was really going on there. But that network was named, lover or hater by Vicky Ward, basically saying that, not only was he involved in intelligence, aka Epstein, but he was working with Adnan Khashoggi. Well, Khashoggi was the front man for all this. He was facilitating Israel going in and buying all of these arms from Czechoslovakia and Poland. So there was basically plausible deniability of how they were paid for. They get the arms. They then ship those down to the Contras. Then the United States ships the cocaine and other drugs up through South America here, and then we would pay Khashoggi. Okay, that's how that would work. So there'd be this cycle and plausible deniability, and you would get the drugs in, you'd get the drug money, and everything was through a back door. And these organizations still exist today. That's why JP Morgan can find 20 tons of cocaine, over $1 billion in cocaine off the coast, and the boat's owned by billionaires, and they don't go to jail. This idea, Graham, that nobody's above the law. I see that talking point. Nobody's above the law. It's like, have you watched the last 2,000 years of documented history? Because I've seen a whole lot of people that are above the law, that continue to be above the law. You look at the outright nature of the Saudi Arabian royal family. That's ruled by bloodline, full nepotism, above the law. You can say that the royal bloodlines out in Europe have no power. I disagree with you, but does Prince Andrew look above the law to you yet? He's also their arms dealer. Right. Just so you know, he's cutting those $400+ billion arms deals with Saudi Arabia. What else is Adnan Khashoggi known for? Arms dealing. So this network has been so in your face for so long. I encourage people to go check out Hopsicker's, Barry and the Boys. It's really tough to find, but there's a ton of stuff out there now on Barry Seal, or just start reading these documents and your jaw is going to drop, because this is the confirmation again that the United States government was running cocaine into airports in Mena, Arkansas. And of course, Bill Clinton was part of that operation. You get selected when you're a Rhodes Scholar. You get pushed when you're for Rockefeller and Ted Turner ideals. That's the reality of the situation, Graham. And that's the synthesis, right, of this true predator class of billionaires and their masters at the top. And then kind of like those Andrew Capo Cuomo minions, those Kamala Vampirus minions, those Pete Bootlicker, because they're giving Buttigieg some spot in this administration if they get it. That's a scary national security advisor, I promise you. And where do they come from? The same organizations. Pete Bootlicker, he's just another Rhodes Scholar. He's just another talking head for this same media military industrial complex, Graham. And, for now, we've got to use this platform, right? Because it's the second largest search engine in the world. It's the largest video platform out there, as much as we can. I've been demonetized for 4 months now. I think I'm on my way out, but I'm going to use it while I can, because I know how important it is to use the tools around you. You can use a hammer to build a house. It can bash someone's head in. Well, I'm trying to build a house of truth while they're trying to bash your brains out with cat videos all day.
Yeah, dude. But I see you're over at Rockfin, which is a smart move, because absolutely love what they're doing over there. It's blockchain, cryptocurrency. And I tell my audience, for $10 a month, you get all of our premium content, yours, mine, Richard Medhurst, Ron Placone, everybody else that's over there. So it's funny. It's like blockchain and crypto is the kryptonite to the ruling classes, evil and crimes, because they control banking, they control the information, they control all this stuff. And that's why it's so important, I think, to get more involved in that. But Jason, before we let you go, man, thank you for spending all your time with us. Where can people watch more of your videos and follow you?
It is youtube.com/InfoWarrior, or you can just follow me on Twitter at Jason Bermas. I post most of those videos over there as well. I double stream And I'm just trying to get the information out, man. All my documentary films, they're free. They're in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies. Fabled Enemies, guys, if you want to see Joey B, way before he was Zombie Joe, basically lie and cover up about the Pakistani involvement in 9/11 and funding the hijackers, I've been talking about Biden for 15 years. Please watch that. Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. Again, all for free. I'm just trying to get the word out there, this information, because, Graham, like you know, man, it's not about left or right. It's about right and wrong always. And if we want even a semblance of our constitutional republic back at this point, we are going to have to fight extremely hard like we've never fought before.
Yeah, it's happening because there's 28 million evictions happening. The economy is going to completely collapse regardless of who's in the White House. And then what? I mean, like, and they're already bringing military against their own people. So like anyone that doesn't get it yet, like the Trumpers who were like, good, they're knocking around those liberals in Portland. Well, they're going to come for you, friend. They're going to come evict your house and you're going to get snatched up in an unmarked van, and they won't care if you got an American Eagle MAGA hat. They're not going to care. They're not going to care if you have a I'm with her shirt. They're not going to care. They're not going to care at all. They're just going to snatch you up. And the more people wake up to that fact, that this two-party system is professional wrestling, that they want us divided, they want us fighting with each other, because what's really happening is, they're getting children to go on billionaires' planes. They're raping and selling children around the planet. And then they keep us distracted with, Tucker Carlson mispronounced Kamala Harris's name or what, okay. Like, yeah, of course he did. Who cares? I mean, like, a guy on Fox News said something stupid. What? That's the first time that's happened. Like, no way. And then the CNN has this panel of Hillary people. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But like, Jason, thanks for taking time out of your day, dude. It's good to see you. And, thanks for coming on my show. Whenever you want me to come back on yours, you let me know.
When you come back on, we're talking Stanley Kubrick. That's another thing I can rattle off forever. All right.
Yeah, he's the one who said the whole world's run by pedophiles. He said that.
I mean, again, Stanley Kubrick, very prophetic. To this day, Dr. Strangelove, a black and white film that is probably 50 to 60 years old at this point. It's got to be like 1960s. If that, it is incredible. It's not only watchable, it's extremely relevant today. People, go check it out. Thank you, Graham.
Thanks, brother. We'll see you soon.
Hey, everybody, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification button and the subscribe button, even if you've done it before, because they're unsubscribing, many of you, every day. Watch the ads all the way through. If you click skip ad, I don't get paid. Also, support us at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. Rockfin.com is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. All my videos are on Rockfin ad-free. Thanks for watching.